We bring in Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN front office insider. Mike T, you can see him on Get Up and Sports Center. And leading up to the draft, he'll be reporting on site for the Combine. His first mock draft will be coming out March 26th on ESPN.com. Good to see you again, Mike. Explain to me why Steve Wilks got fired.
Dan, great to be with you. That was surprising. Obviously, Dan, it had much more to do than what we just saw on Sunday because, look, we could go back over the game, and there was probably a dozen different plays where if it had gone differently, we're talking about a 49er championship. And here's to me just to take it behind the scenes, every single coach on that staff is talking to their wife, girlfriend, agent to say, like, hey, if that could happen to Wilks and we go to the Super Bowl, that could happen to me. And I'm not saying that they won't get a good replacement because there's 32 of these on the planet, and he may very well know who it's going to be. But if I'm a candidate, a viable candidate with options, and I see a guy take a team into overtime against Patrick Mahomes and get fired, I'm going to pause before I agree to come on board.
If they win the Super Bowl, does Steve Wilks still get fired?
Well, I don't think so, but something must have happened either philosophically or otherwise. I got to think this decision was made before Sunday because, again, that game was too close, and we can make a real argument that defense played outstanding, especially in the first half. You know, the way the game was flowing, and it was 3-0 for a while, you just felt like 49ers were dominating that game, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that, again, to me, this decision had to be made well before Sunday.
How is that firing carried out? Like, is it GM that brings you in, and then, or is Shanahan involved in this? Set the scene.
Yep. Basically, you get back, Monday, and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan together walk in and say, "Hey, Steve, we appreciate everything you did. We just feel like it's in everyone's best interest for you and us to go in a different direction, and we wish you nothing but the best and appreciate everything you did." And something else that's really important, Dan, when you sit in these seats and have the privilege of leadership jobs, there's a great saying that applies here, which is when you let somebody go and they're surprised, you've done a bad job as the manager, because what should have been happening, and maybe there is, to be fair, many conversations along the way of like, hey, Steve, we need to have some really hard conversations. I don't like the way this thing is going, and this is a tough conversation, but let's invest in this conversation so we can avoid the other conversation that neither you nor I want to have.
And then Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator with the Chiefs, got extended. There were no head coaching vacancies, but he's been a head coach before. I wonder if he realizes this is what I do really well, and why try to get another head coaching job?
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I thought Kevin Demoff, the COO of the now LA Rams, said something very authentic and enlightening. He said, hey, when we were the St. Louis Rams, we didn't give him everything he needed to be a head coach, the transition and everything else. And taking nothing away from Dave Canales, who may wind up being a great coach. But Dan, if you and I were owning or operating an NFL team and we put Steve Spagnuolo's resume next to Dave Canales's, it's not even in the same stratosphere. I mean, when you look at the job he's done, especially with all the resources on the offensive side and how young they are on defense, if we were running an NFL team and we're talking about leadership and player development, I'm hard-pressed to think, like, what boxes does Steve Spagnuolo doesn't check?
If you were the Chiefs GM, how would you approach Chris Jones' contract situation?
Yeah, this one, and I've been in this situation before. I tell Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, like, here's what's going to happen, fellas. I can give both of you guys a solid B deal. It's a good deal. It's not a great deal. We can't give everybody a great deal. But the alternative to a B deal is getting franchised, and one of you will be franchised. I am giving you the answers to the test. Here is the letter. All I have to do is hit send. So we're going to work our tails off between now and I think it's March 12th to get a deal done that we could both live with. Neither one of us is going to love, but we're going to like, and we could go for a three-peat. But you're not going to get the top of the market. You're going to get a really good deal, and one of you is going to get tagged. And if you don't want to get tagged, tell your agent to close the door, and we're not leaving until the deal's done.
Does that work?
Yeah, it sure does. Because, again, like, when you know that the alternative to a B deal is getting tagged, all of a sudden you work your ass off to say, like, okay, like, if I could get the guaranteed money, or if I could get like the third year guaranteed, or if I could get, this incentive to get me where I want to go. Like, fear does the work of reason, and players hate being tagged, and I get it, but it's a great tactic this time of year.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that with Chris Jones and Snead. Like, who's more valuable moving forward?
Yeah, look, I built defenses with Rex Ryan where I could tell you it's the corner from a standpoint that when you have Snead and Trent Williams, you can change the math, meaning we're going to play man to man and our guys are better than yours. So even though we love Chris Jones, we're going to send more people than you can block. And, it worked really, really well for us at the Jets. I just think when you get a guy like Snead, his length, his ball skills, I believe there was like 462 times he was targeted this year, didn't give up a touchdown. Those guys, to me, when they're young in their prime, they don't leave the building.
He's Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN front office insider. How often do agents get in the way of what a player really wants, but the agent may have a different agenda?
Yeah, that's a simple question and a complicated answer. Um, every situation is a little bit different. I think what they're building there was a lot of what you felt like in New England for years, where Brady took less. They had a real chance to win the championship. Dan, it's really known as the aura of association. And I think what you're going to see in Kansas City in particular, skill players that don't get what they want, take a one-year deal and say, hey, look, let me go win a championship with Mahomes and get back to the market. And that's not always great for an agent. But when you get this sort of like player-led movement, and when you can play with a guy like Mahomes, that's hard to beat and becomes a force multiplier in the player market.
So you think that will they draft a wide receiver in Kansas City, or more likely to sign a wide receiver?
Yeah, I would go try to get a really inexpensive veteran receiver, like the guys like the Brandon Cookses of the world, or, someone's going to fall through the cracks. Is it Calvin Ridley? Is it Michael Pittman? I would draft a left tackle, let Donovan Smith graduate, put my resources into those two defensive players, and keep just throwing resources at that receiver position and see what sticks, like they did, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Rashee Rice. Those are the most, like, to me, dispensable part of this plan. The corner, the defensive lineman, you got to keep them. Draft the left tackle. Donovan Smith is okay, not great. And then attack the receiver position in volume.
How much truth comes out of scouts or coaches, GMs? Like at what point do you say, now I know what they're saying about the draft is real, as opposed to leading up? There's always, J.J. McCarthy hasn't played a game in, a month and a half, but he's going up the draft boards here a little bit. Somebody's going to fall down the draft board. It happens every single year. So at what point do you feel like now we're starting to get real information?
Right now, like we're in it right here, right now. And let me tell you why specifically. When we go back a year ago, Dan, and I think Ryan Poles has done a great job, the Bears GM, he made that trade with Carolina to flip 1-10 right at the combine. Those conversations have already begun. So if we're Atlanta, if we're Pittsburgh, and we're juxtaposing J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Justin Fields, those are the decisions we have to make by the time we get to the combine. And that's why, to me, like we are already in it. And if you're Denver or all New Orleans, like all these other teams, you're looking at J.J. McCarthy and you're looking at, do I want to pay the bill for Kirk Cousins at $45 million and up? Or does Bo Nix, Michael Penix, McCarthy, once they get past those top three of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, that juxtaposition of our options is going to happen by the time we get to the combine.
What's Justin Fields worth on the trade market?
He's a second-round pick to either Pittsburgh or Atlanta. I think he's a player that has gotten better. There's still some flaws. There's still some inconsistencies, but he's a great kid with a ton of ability. And if you look at Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator at Pittsburgh, and the success he had when he was in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, very similar skill set. And likewise, ironically, in Atlanta, where he just left, with all those other skill players, they're desperate for a young athletic quarterback. And ironically, Fields is from Georgia. And, to me, there's one of those two teams would be a great fit.
Caleb Williams is from D.C. They have the second pick in the draft. How do you finesse this if you're Caleb Williams' agent without coming out and saying we don't want to go to Chicago?
Yeah, it's hard because if I'm Chicago, I'm telling Caleb Williams, start looking for places to live here. You can move here in March, April, May. You can move here in October. Your area code's going to be 312 on your phone, and you're going to be here a long time. So you could tell me all about the DC area, and they could offer me whatever you want. I don't care, but let's not overthink it. Caleb Williams is going to be a Bear, and I'm not really interested in even picking the phone up.
You don't think there's a trade-off or somebody at least tries to go up and get it?
Dan, in our industry, like you're judged by a couple of things. Obviously, your win and loss record, right? But let's face it, part of the angst and consternation that we saw in Carolina a year ago was, and I do think earnestly that Bryce Young, when it's all said and done, is going to be a really good quarterback. Now, is he going to be top 8, top 12, top 15? I'm not sure, but he's a talented player. He's small, but he's good. But every single week in Carolina, they dealt with, well, here's what Bryce Young did right here. And here's CJ Stroud that blew right by him. And if we were running the Bears, they're not going to say it publicly, but 1,000% I can guarantee you if they trade and take, either fill in the blank, Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and they pass on Patrick Mahomes, you don't survive that decision.
Good to talk to you as always, Mike. Thank you.
All right, Dan. Appreciate it.
That's Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN front office insider, and he will be at the Combine. His first mock draft will be March 26th on ESPN.com. Today's Mercedes-Benz interview of the day brought to you by Mercedes-Benz EV. Owning a Mercedes-Benz EV isn't just an extraordinary experience, it's extra easy. The vehicle's all electric, the feeling all Mercedes, the choice all yours. Learn more at MBUSA.com/EQ.